All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Lockup Shutdown podcast. My name's Monica. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Zach. Finally back in rhythm, despite how busy we are. How's it going?
Good. Busy week once again, but we can always count on the Lockup Shutdown fans and the Lockup Shutdown podcast to be here every week. So that's always important. And here we are back at it for week 8.
We gotta show up and show out. Maybe that'll be our spin-off podcast. But for now, today, we'll talk about Mike White blazing past the Bengals and what that means for Zach Wilson, put a spotlight on this year's first-round rookie offensive lineman, and discuss some of the biggest trades from an overall underwhelming trade deadline. But first, as always, it's our biggest surprises from Week 8. Zach, how about you start us off?
My first surprise from Week 8 will be from early on in Week 8, and that will be the Green Bay Packers versus the Arizona Cardinals. Seemed like the Green Bay Packers JV team was out there, and with how dominant the Cardinals had been, 7-0, going on undefeated, for them to lose to the Packers, who had lost their top 3 wide receivers for a variety of reasons, was shocking to me. And how good the Cardinals offense has been all season, for Kyler Murray to go out, not have a single touchdown and 2 interceptions, was a shocking performance to me.
It was certainly a contest between two very banged up and ultimately underwhelming teams, despite all of the hype going into the game. Personally, My biggest surprise from Week 8 was Cooper Rush leading the Cowboys to a 20-16 victory over the Vikings in primetime Sunday Night Football.
That was a surprise, but I think I've talked about it earlier, just how talented this Dallas Cowboys team is. Any half-decent quarterback is able to do something when you have Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalton Schultz. So, their performance by Cooper Rush, and with a struggling Vikings team, I was somewhat surprised, but not as surprised as I was with the Packers, looking fairly comfortable against the Cardinals. And we'll say credit to the Packers. I know I was talking bad about the Cardinals, but the Packers are a good team, and credit to them for looking good on Thursday night.
You can never doubt Aaron Rodgers. Back to the Cowboys. You're right, they are a very talented team, with Amari Cooper having 122 yards and CeeDee Lamb also going for 100-plus yards. You have to give credit to their defense. They just played lights-out football, truly worthy of locking up and shutting down. Kirk Cousins had just 184 yards and a touchdown, and Dalvin Cook was held to 78 yards and not a single touchdown. The Cowboys looked amazing. They were just everything that could go right for them was going right for them. The only thing they needed for things to go more right for them would be having their starting quarterback. But despite that, somehow Cooper Rush out of nowhere defied my expectations and led them to a victory over the Vikings.
Yeah, I was pretty sure Dak Prescott was going to play after having a bye week last week, but even with the bye week and all of this week to recover, he wasn't able to play in the game against the Vikings. And credit to Cooper Rush for stepping in primetime Sunday Night Football and beating this Vikings team, as Kirk Cousins once again loses a primetime game.
Well, it certainly isn't a primetime game, but there is one quarterback who also seems to be stepping into big shoes and filling them well, and that would be the New York Jets' Mike White, with an absolutely blazing performance against the Bengals. Do you think there's a quarterback controversy brewing in the Meadowlands after what happened in the game on Sunday?
I don't think there's any controversy. With all the resources the Jets have piled into Zach Wilson, I'm thinking he'll get the starting job back once he's healthy again, and he'll have to have a bad week in order to lose that job. Mike White, great performance, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, but I think it was more of a different play calling system that changed it around for the Jets than it was the actual quarterback situation. Zach Wilson's throwing on average 30 pass attempts a game, and that's with them trailing almost all game, every game. Then you get against the Bengals where they're competitive the entire game, have a lead for most of the game, and they throw the ball 45 times. So I think the different play calling is what helped the Jets turn this game around and have the quarterback play they've wanted for so long, just not out of the quarterback they would have hoped it was.
You know, I certainly don't want to compare Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers in any way, but people once thought that Matt Flynn would replace Aaron Rodgers. There is no quarterback controversy going on with the New York Jets. I mean, he had two poor interceptions against a very weak Bengals pass defense. They're 23rd in passing yards allowed, last in completions allowed, and they have the most opponent passing attempts, so clearly teams know that you have to throw the ball if you're going up against the Bengals, unless you're the Ravens, apparently. Mike White, he's just some guy who got drafted to the Cowboys in the 5th round of 2018. If he keeps playing good, he might make for a great trade fodder, get a draft pick if you're the Jets. That's great. That's wonderful. But if you're the New York Jets, Zach Wilson is still your starter. He's a rookie. He's young. He has a lot of talent. He probably has a very high ceiling. You can't just... I don't understand why I've seen so many people calling for Mike White to be the new starter, when clearly Zach Wilson is by far the better quarterback.
Yeah, and I think the Jets put most of those worries to bed today when they announced that they did sign Zach Wilson's personal coach, John Beck, to their full-time coaching staff. Actually, this morning they signed him for the rest of the season. So I don't think you're going to sign a quarterback's personal coach to your full-time staff if you're not planning on riding with that quarterback for the foreseeable future. So I think we're both on the same page as the Jets, and Zach Wilson will be the New York Jets starting quarterback as long as he's healthy.
Let's talk about a different quarterback situation going on within the league. Carson Wentz didn't exactly have the greatest game in their Sunday night bout against the Titans. He hasn't looked great when you watch him at all this season, honestly. Did Carson Wentz really deserve a second chance as a starter?
I think he deserved a second chance. As much crap as we give him for the time in Philadelphia, up until the 2020 season, I think he'd been a great quarterback for the Eagles. Never threw more than 7 interceptions in 2017, 18, or 19 until he threw 15 interceptions in 2020. So I think a change of system, give him a chance to try and correct his ways, and he's tied with in the league with only 3 interceptions the whole season, and 2 of those came against the Titans this week. So it was a bad week for him this week, but I'm not going to hit the panic button just yet after he did beat the 49ers the week before, and we were praising him for that.
Absolutely. I mean, he only has 3 interceptions, like you said. They looked pretty silly, and his decision-making clearly isn't the greatest, despite all of his years in the league. But he's still a fairly talented quarterback. If healthy, he's on pace for his statistical second-best season in the league. Him and Michael Pittman have looked amazing as a duo this year, and while Wentz might not, pop off on the stat sheet, or he doesn't pop off when you watch him in the game, he's still doing his job. He's a very solid quarterback, and I think it's way too early to say that, no, Carson Wentz is a bust or whatever. He's still a pretty decent player, and I think that he's gonna have a decent, give or take a few years with the Colts that are going to be something to be proud of. Do I think he's a playoff leading quarterback? Probably not. Do I think he's a bust? Of course not. He's not Ryan Leaf or anything.
Yeah, definitely not at the Ryan Leaf standard. And if you look at the last 4 weeks, he has 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the last 4 weeks he played before this week. So give credit to the Titans, and it was also interesting just the Colts play calling change because he had more completions this week than he had passes attempted last week. 27 for 51 this week after only attempting 26 passes all of last week against the Niners and only 20 passes the week before that and against the Texans. So he attempted more passes this week than in the previous 2 weeks combined, which was unusual from the Colts after not too many personnel changes from week to week, and maybe that was part of the reason why he's thrown 2 interceptions in one game after only throwing 1 interception the entire season prior to this week.
He's looked great, and I think he's very well deserving of that second chance. Let's move on to this week's Rookie Spotlight. This week we'll be talking about some of the best defensive linemen around the league, quote-unquote best. These were all 5 guys who were taken in the first round of this year's draft. We have Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker, Alex Leatherwood, and Christian Darrisaw. Zach, why don't you start us off with Penei Sewell?
Penei Sewell, the first pick of all these guys, and he's done a okay job on the Detroit Lions. Tough to do too well when you're on the Lions, as he's probably the only somewhat respectable lineman on that offensive line, but only allowed 4 sacks in the season, so I'll give him credit for that, but I'm thinking a better situation could help him a lot more.
I know you say only allowed 4 sacks, but that doesn't exactly put him in the greatest of situations in terms of all the offensive linemen in the league. He's looked okay. Has a fairly middle-of-the-road Pro Football Focus grade, which I will simply abbreviate to PFF, as everyone does. He has 6 penalties on the year and 4 sacks allowed. I don't think he was really the best offensive lineman out of this draft. I don't think he's going to be the best offensive lineman out of the draft. Maybe that's simply because he was drafted to the Lions. Maybe he'll flourish somewhere else. But I kind of think he was a little bit overhyped, to be honest. You know, people criticize the Bengals for not having taken him over Jamar Chase, but clearly you see that paid off very well for them and didn't pay off well for the Detroit Lions. The Lions still got a pretty good steal for the 7th pick, at least at the time. But, I don't know. He's not the greatest out of this group. I probably wouldn't even put him in the top 3 out of this group.
Yeah,
He's okay.
hasn't lived up to the hype, but with the other linemen that we are going to talk about that were all drafted after him, I think the Lions are going to look back at the draft and maybe
have some regrets.
Not be too pleased with themselves.
Let's talk about someone who's very pleased with themselves. It's whoever the Chargers GM is, because they drafted Rashawn Slater with the 13th pick out of Northwestern. Has the 6th highest PFF grade of any tackle in the league this season. He doesn't even look like a rookie to begin with. He gives off like Quentin Nelson rookie year vibes. This guy might just be a Pro Bowler this year for all we know. He looks amazing. This is easily, if not Creed Humphrey, he'll be the best defensive lineman that comes out of this draft.
Yeah, Rashawn Slater, you were talking about it, and I'll have the stats to support. I think we agree that he may be the best lineman, obviously best lineman this year, but maybe best lineman in career-wise of this group. Only has 3 penalties against him the entire season and has only allowed 2 sacks the entire season. So Justin Herbert has a new teammate in Rashawn Slater, and he's done his job and then some. So great job for Rashawn Slater.
The Chargers are rebuilding themselves a team again. We'll just have to see if this time it can lead them to the playoffs, but it's a new era ahead for them. Let's talk about the new era for the Jets, as we were talking about earlier. Let's talk about Elijah Vera Tucker, who was drafted with the 14th pick, directly after Rashawn Slater to the Jets from USC. Has the 4th highest PFF grade of any guard for the last 3 weeks. He's looked pretty solid so far. He's one of the better linemen out of this draft. I'd definitely put him at number 2 if I were to rank them. He looks great. Obviously, he's playing on a very weak Jets team, which I guess says even more about him that he's performing well even in that position. I think the Jets have a very nice young core now that they have Elijah Vera Tucker and Mekhi Becton. Zach Wilson is going to be happy having a healthy young offensive line protecting him as we move on into the future.
Yeah, Elijah Vera Tucker's been a huge reason for, I won't say the Jets' success because they haven't been too successful, but a big reason why they haven't been as bad as some people thought they were going to be. And Jets have had success with the run game, and I think Elijah Vera Tucker is the number one reason why, as well as giving Zach Wilson some time in the pocket. So, been a great offensive lineman, only allowed 1 sack on the season, and Michael Carter, as well as Mike White and Zach Wilson, will be really appreciative of everything he's come in and done and made an immediate impact for the Jets.
Next up, we have arguably one of the biggest busts of this draft. It was Alex Leatherwood, who was drafted with the 17th pick to the Raiders from Alabama. How about you start us off with this one, Zachary?
Yep, Alex Leatherwood. I think after the college season, Alex Leatherwood was going to be my number 2 running back or number 2 offensive tackle in the draft, and he ended up falling to the 4th offensive tackle taken, but he's looked not anywhere close to the top 4, maybe not even top 40 offensive lineman right now. He leads the league in penalties. He's allowed 5 sacks and hasn't played not even every snap for the Raiders, and their first round pick is not done almost anything for them. You can't say that too many times about an Alabama football player, but that's exactly what Alex Leatherwood has done so far.
Like you said, he leads the league in penalties, he leads the league in sacks allowed. The Raiders seem to believe that he's a very versatile player. They keep moving him around to different slots. Slots in the offensive linemen be like, here, you go here, you go here. They think he's capable of, playing better at different positions. Maybe he's more of a generalist guy than a specialist guy. But let's be honest here. This guy is a bona fide scrub. He can't play. I don't mean no disrespect whatsoever. You get the point. He has easily one of the weakest PFF grades in the entire league of any player, for that matter. He's just plain not good. You watch the game, he is the reason that Derek Carr ever gets sacked. If you are watching a Raiders game and Derek Carr gets sacked, and you watch that replay, you will probably see Alex Leatherwood getting beat, no matter where he is on that offensive line. He's not good. I'd probably put him at the absolute lowest out of any of these guys. Maybe he has some potential to him, but I just don't see it. He doesn't look good.
Yeah, doesn't look good, and he's making life tough for the Raiders, especially without Josh Jacobs now, who's hurt, and not making anything easy for Derek Carr. So we've talked about the disarray in the Raiders franchise, and Alex Leatherwood is, I guess we can give him credit for keeping his issues on the field, unlike some other Raiders, but on the field he doesn't look good, and he does have a lot of issues on the field that need to get solved quickly, or he may not be on the field for too much longer.
We'll have to see. One person who hasn't seen the field too much this season up until recently was offensive lineman Christian Darrisaw, who was drafted 23rd to the Vikings from Virginia Tech. They didn't seem to want to use him for the first handful of weeks, as he saw his first start in Week 6 against the Panthers. Overall, though, he looked lost in the last game against the Cowboys, especially on that Randy Gregory sack on Kirk Cousins. He didn't look like he knew what he was doing. He has a pretty average PFF grade. He doesn't look awful, but he doesn't look amazing either. I'd probably rank him 4th, maybe 3rd if Penei Sewell continues to play poorly. We have to see more out of Christian Darrisaw before we can really say anything. He looked great in college, that's for sure.
Yeah, he looked great in college, and I'm just waiting to see some more out of him, whether I get too high or too low on him. But after just a few weeks, I'm not going to make too many statements about him just yet. I think he's looked okay, besides obviously that one play against the Cowboys where he was responsible for Kirk Cousins getting sacked. But he's looked like a mediocre young rookie, and he's got plenty of room to improve, but he hasn't been a bust yet.
I think it's always too early to declare any given player a bust until after they've retired. Let's move on and talk about what we just experienced at 4 p.m. today at the time that we're recording it. It was the NFL trade deadline. We had a pretty underwhelming trade deadline. There were a lot of things that happened and a lot of things that didn't happen. Odell Beckham is staying with his team, but I think one of the biggest headlines is the fact that Deshaun Watson has failed to be traded before the trade deadline. Tell me about that one, Zach.
Yep, the most popular destination that we heard of for him was the Miami Dolphins, and it seemed like, from what I read, they had a deal in place if Deshaun Watson was going to get his civil suits settled, but it never got settled, which means the deal wasn't going to go through. And to be honest, I think it might be better in the long run for the Dolphins that the deal didn't go through. I think Tua isn't a bad quarterback just yet. I'm not going to say they need to get rid of him. I think with all the resources they put into trying to get Tua to give up on him this early and try and get Deshaun Watson would have not been the best idea for them in the long run. But I did like the idea of Deshaun Watson going to the Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers have everything they need to succeed besides the quarterback. They have their long-term running back, got an awesome defense with Stephon Gilmore on the team now, as well as DJ Moore in that wide receiver room. So he didn't go there either, but I think the Panthers would have gained a lot more than any other team had they gotten Deshaun Watson from the Texans.
Yeah, it's a shame that he didn't get traded. My prediction earlier in this season was that Deshaun Watson would be traded in a blockbuster right before the trade deadline. Your prediction was that he wouldn't get traded at all until the offseason, so I guess you ended up turning out to be the correct one there.
Yeah, hard to predict that one, but I think that was probably the best for all parties involved that he stayed there.
I feel like the Dolphins kind of still messed up regardless because of them showing interest in the Texans and the fact that they agreed upon a deal to trade with the Texans and stuff. It can't be great for Tua's confidence as their starting quarterback. There were a handful of other pretty blockbuster deals that did actually happen, though. Personally, my personal favorite was the Rams obtaining Von Miller from Denver for a second-round pick and a third-round pick. It's not even fair that their pass rush now has Von Miller and Aaron Donald, and if I told you that this was going to happen 4 years ago, you'd probably laugh.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much talent they have on their team right now, as well as Leonard Floyd and Jalen Ramsey. And now you add Von Miller to that team. They're got to be Super Bowl favorites now after adding Matt Stafford in the offseason. And I think this just solidifies their reign to the top. It's Super Bowl or bust now after giving up those 2 draft picks. But it is crazy.
It is the Rams, after all, though. They are always trading draft picks away.
I'll say the Rams haven't had a third-round draft pick in, I think, since Sean McVay got to the Los Angeles Rams. They haven't had a draft pick in the first 3 rounds since he got there.
He just
So
keeps trading them away.
it's what the Rams are known for, and I guess they're always in a win now mode, and can't blame them this year after starting 7-1. Looks to be their year, and they're going all in for it.
You mentioned the Panthers earlier, especially their trade for Stephon Gilmore for a 6th round pick. They also picked up a few other players. I know one in particular also added to their cornerback core when they traded for C.J. Henderson, a very young cornerback. I'm pretty sure, wasn't he just drafted last year or the year before that? It was something like that. They traded away Dan Arnold for C.J. Henderson. Their defense looks great. Literally all they need at this point is a quarterback, and unfortunately they didn't trade for Deshaun Watson. That certainly would have been a very massive blockbuster, and I would have finally taken back what I said about the Panthers, and not what I said about Sam Darnold, obviously.
Yeah, it's been a unique year for the Panthers. I think they did start 3-0, and you think they're gonna be a legit team, and then they lose 4 straight, and then win again this week finally. So I think they were able to keep up that hot start. They may have found themselves more active during the trade deadline, but after that, the struggles they had, and only sitting at 500 now with the Bucs in their division, who are presumably going to win that division with ease, they may have just counted their losses and maybe try to win the division after Tom Brady retires.
Absolutely. The Chiefs have certainly made some moves during the trade deadline as well. Just today, they traded away a conditional 6th round pick to Pittsburgh for outside linebacker Melvin Ingram, a very solid piece. They also traded away Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, the hero during the COVID pandemic situation, and they traded him away for Jets tight end Daniel Brown. What do you think about how the Chiefs performed in the trade deadline?
The Chiefs added much needed offensive line with Duvernay-Tardif, so I'll give them credit for that. If they didn't have Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson behind the offensive line, they'd be 0-8 right now, but as good as Patrick Mahomes is at trying to evade the oncoming defensive linemen and linebackers, he can make up for an offensive line. But good they recognize how much talent they need to improve that offensive line, and give them credit for that, as well as a few other
certainly
trades
didn't improve that very much, because they traded away Laurent Duvernay-Tardif for a tight end.
Oops.
Regardless.
Cut that.
We're leaving that one in. So let's finish things off with one of my personal favorite trades that happened before the trade deadline. It was clearly Joe Flacco getting traded to the Jets. No, I'm just kidding. It was Mark Ingram making his return to the New Orleans Saints. That backfield now consisting once again of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. That's such a great, iconic duo, and I'm so happy to see them back together. How does that trade make you feel, Zach?
Yeah, it makes your heart feel good again to see those two, who are so effective, back on the field together. But in the end, I think it's still going to be Alvin Kamara's backfield all the time, and Mark Ingram will get a few touches. But unfortunately, Mark Ingram's getting older and older by the day, and he's not going to get as many touches as we used to see from him. But Alvin Kamara, I think, is even better than when he was during their previous partnership, and Kamara will continue to have primary responsibilities in that backfield.
To be fair, Sean Payton doesn't really want to use Alvin Kamara anyway either, so they'll be splitting what few reps that the running backs on that team end up seeing anyway. Maybe they'll run the ball a little bit more now that Jameis is injured. We'll just have to see. Let's finally move on to our final topic. Nearly halfway through the year, What coach is on the chopping block if things don't turn around before the end of the season?
The coach that I would say is on the chopping block is Urban Meyer and Brian Flores. I
Certainly
know
very obvious choices.
Urban Meyer, you may say, all right, he needs more time just because it is his first year, but with all the off the field issues that he's created, if your only win is against the Miami Dolphins on a last second field goal, I think you're gonna need to get a new system, especially when you draft the number one overall quarterback and you think he's supposed to be the solution to all your problems, and then he doesn't work out. I think it's a lot easier to replace a coach than it is a quarterback, and I think Urban Meyer could be on the chopping block if the Jags don't increase their win total from last year of just one win.
To be fair for Brian Flores, it's certainly on the chopping block when you're losing to said coach who's also on the chopping block.
It is, and I think if he loses to the Houston Texans this next week, he may not even make it the whole season with the chopping block. I guess the good news for him is that he has winnable games, but the bad news for him is that
He's not
he has
winning them.
winnable games. The bad news is that he does have winnable games, and if he doesn't win them, he's even more likely to be on the chopping block with a game against the Texans, 2 games against the Jets, as well as a game against the Giants. They should at least win 50% of those games, and if they don't win at least 4 games this season, I think Brian Flores may be looking for a new job in the NFL, which is not the Miami Dolphins.
Personally, I think the coach that might be on the chopping block by the end of the season is Matt Nagy, the coach of the Chicago Bears. He's not doing a good job as a coach at all. He can't seem to properly utilize Justin Fields at all. You finally got to see a little bit more of Justin Fields' action in their last game on Sunday, simply because he was running around a lot, trying to, make up time or whatever, but none of it was involving play call or anything. He's way too stubborn to switch up his game plan for the sake of, the fact that he's a different quarterback starting. He's running the Andy Dalton playbook for the Justin Fields games. For some reason, he still wants to start Andy Dalton, of all people, despite having a first-round rookie national championship winning quarterback just playing pretty well. And I think everything really kind of revolved ultimately around the fact that they're paying Nick Foles $24 million to sit as their third string on the bench.
Yeah, it's a bad situation in Chicago, and I think I didn't mention him, but Matt Nagy is on the chopping block, especially with the embarrassing losses that they have had so far this season. And I think with Allen Robinson doing absolutely nothing, he was part of the trade deadline rumors and eventually didn't get traded, but he has yet to get more than 50 yards in 6 out of 8 games as one of the arguably top 10 wide receiver in the game. And with Justin Fields at quarterback and Andy Dalton as quarterback, he can't get anything going. And with those multiple quarterbacks, I think that the only common problem in this is Matt Nagy, and the Bears do need to get rid of Matt Nagy at some point, but I also think it's feasible for them to get second place in their division still. And I don't think they're going to fire Matt Nagy after a second place finish in the NFC North.
Truly be a shame if they didn't fire him, but we'll just have to see. It's time to move on to the final segment. As always, it's our lightning fast picks of Week 9. Let's just jump straight into it, starting off with Thursday night between the Jets and the Colts. An absolute stinker, but it's Thursday night. When is it not?
This game is not going to be great for anyone besides Jets fans and Colts fans, but I think Colts fans will be a lot happier after the Colts fans come away with a win.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We praised Carson Wentz a lot earlier in the episode, and I think I'm gonna have to give it to the Colts. The Browns and the Bengals, a wonderful AFC North Division matchup, always an exciting game. But give me the Browns over the Bengals in this one.
I'm gonna take the Bengals in this one. They did just lose to the Jets, but I think the Browns are in a just giant bunch of dysfunction right now after Odell Beckham Sr. is calling out Baker Mayfield and OBJ is trying to get traded at the trade deadline. I think the Bengals have a solid core of rookies and young guys, and they'll come away with a win against the Browns this week.
Alright, the Broncos and the Cowboys. I think this one's a pretty obvious one. The Cowboys are going to be riding those Broncos right off into the sunset after a win. Whether it's Cooper
Yeah.
Rush or Dak Prescott, give me the Cowboys.
Yep, Cooper Rush displayed how good he can be for the Cowboys and lead them to a win. And I expect Dak Prescott to be back, but I'm with you that whoever starts for the Cowboys, both of them can lead them to a win against the Broncos.
Next up, we've got the Texans and the Dolphins. Again, absolute stinker. But if Miami loses this one, it's looking real bad for Brian Flores. Give me the Dolphins in this one.
Yeah, the Texans haven't looked great at all this entire season besides the very first week. And
When they had Tyrod Taylor, to be fair.
I think the Dolphins are going to double their win total and move up from 1 win to 2 wins.
Next up, we've got the Falcons and the Saints. AFC South Division matchup. Saints without a quarterback, though. Perhaps.
Saints are without a quarterback. We'll see if they go with Trevor Siemian or Taysom Hill after Jameis Winston was diagnosed with a torn ACL. But I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints to this one. I think Trevor Siemian looked okay against the Bucs, are able to lead them to a win, and I think they could do that again against the Falcons.
The Falcons are one of the worst teams in the league this year. Give me the Saints any day. It's the Raiders and the Giants. I think this one's pretty obvious. Give me the Raiders.
I'm going to go with a surprise on this one.
Whoa.
Giants kept it competitive with the Chiefs, who I know aren't the Chiefs from the past. But with all the disarray going on within the Raiders franchise and the Henry Ruggs situation that happened today, I think the Giants will walk away with this win.
Next up, we've got the Patriots and the Panthers. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's my two worst quarterbacks in the league. Give me Sam Darnold, please.
Never thought I would hear you say Sam Darnold would win a game willingly, but I'm going to disagree with you again. I think the Patriots are going to beat the Panthers, who are 1-4 the last 5 weeks, as the Patriots have now won 3 of their last 4 and will come out of Carolina with a win.
It was probably a bad decision for me to choose Sam Darnold over Mac Jones there, but that's a tough decision, you know? The Bills and the Jaguars. At least this one's a pretty easy decision. Give me the Bills any day.
Yeah, I don't think you have to say anything on this one. If you're listening to the podcast, you know enough about football to say that the Bills are going to beat the Jags.
Next up, we've got the Vikings and the Ravens coming off of a bye. Coming off of a bye and coming into a win. Give me the Ravens.
Yep, Ravens fortunately can't have an injury in the bye week when they don't have practice or anything else, which is good news for them, and I think they'll come out of their bye week fresh and beat the Vikings.
Next up, we've got the Chargers and the Eagles.
I'm going to take the Los Angeles Chargers in this one. I'm thinking this will be a close game, but the Chargers will fix their struggles they've had the past few weeks and come out of Philadelphia with the win.
Yeah, I absolutely think that the Chargers will have no problem putting things together. Give me the Chargers. Next up, we've got the Packers and the Chiefs. I think this is a pretty easy one. Give me the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, this one looked like a really fun matchup.
It was a State Farm Bowl.
Prior to the week 1 schedule and everything being going on, but as of now, it looks like the Packers are going to be easy favorites, which wouldn't have been said earlier on. in the season.
Like a good neighbor, Aaron Rodgers is there. Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to have to give this one to the Cardinals.
Yeah, the Cardinals are going to rebound from their loss. Didn't look too bad against the Packers, and the Packers are a talented team. So I'm not going to hit the panic button on the Cardinals, and I think they right the ship with a win against the 49ers this week.
A rematch of the Super Bowl from 1999. It's the Titans and the Rams on Sunday Night Football. Give me Matthew Stafford and the Rams for this one.
This one would have been awesome to watch with Derrick Henry going up against the new defense of Aaron Donald and Von Miller. But unfortunately, Derrick Henry will be out for possibly the rest of the season. And for that reason, I'm going to say the Los Angeles Rams win this game.
Such a shame. The top two running backs in the league are injured, Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. What was the point of us having that argument over who's better? Regardless, Monday Night Football, an absolute stinker. It's the Bears and the Steelers.
I'm not going to call this one a stinker. I think the Steelers are a legit team, and I think the Steelers actually might be the most underrated team in the NFL right now. And I think the Steelers are going to wipe the floor with the Bears in this one.
It pains me to say it, but I'm going to have to agree. The Steelers are the better team than the Bears. Neither team is really great, but certainly one is better than the other, and I don't believe in Matt Nagy play calling over Mike Tomlin. Give me the Steelers, and that is it for this episode of the Lockup Shutdown podcast. How we feeling, Zach?
It was a crazy week in the NFL this week, whether it was injuries, trades, or
Off-field drama.
backup quarterbacks, and off the field drama that hopefully gets settled with Henry Ruggs. It was another week in the NFL. Never expect the unexpected when it comes to the NFL, and that's exactly what week 8 was. And hopefully everything can get back to normal in week 9 and we can focus on football again.
Absolutely. But until then, I think it's time for us to lock up and shut down.